Meet Claude. Before you start prompting, tweaking, or optimizing, there's something more important to get right: expectations. Claude is not a faster version of other AI tools. It doesn't behave the same way, and it doesn't reward the same habits. Once you understand how Claude thinks, everything else becomes easier. This lesson is about building the right mental model. First impressions matter. Many people try Claude after using other tools and feel something is off. The answers may seem cautious. The creativity may feel restrained. Sometimes Claude asks clarifying questions instead of jumping in. This isn't a limitation, it's a signal. Claude is optimized for a different kind of work. How Claude approaches problems. Claude is designed to reason carefully before responding. Instead of guessing what you want, it tries to understand intent, consider implications, avoid oversimplified conclusions. This makes Claude especially strong at tasks where clarity, nuance, and structure matter more than speed. Where Claude excels. Claude shines when the task involves thinking, not just generating. It performs especially well when you need to work through complex ideas, analyze long or detailed material, refine writing or arguments, explore sensitive or ambiguous topics. In these situations, Claude's careful approach becomes a real advantage. Where Claude struggles. That same careful design can feel limiting in other contexts. Claude may struggle when the task goal is vague. The prompt relies on guesswork. You ask for something creative without boundaries. Speed matters more than depth. When this happens, Claude is waiting for clearer direction. Which request is most likely to produce a weak or frustrating response from Claude? Summarize this 40-page report and highlight the key trade-offs. Review this argument and point out logical gaps. Help me think through a sensitive workplace decision. Write something creative about anything you want. A different kind of creativity. Claude can be creative, but not in a chaotic way. Its creativity tends to be thoughtful rather than flashy, grounded rather than wild, guided by structure and intent. If you give Claude a clear frame, it explores deeply inside it. If you give it nothing, it plays it safe. Claude. Compared to other AI tools. If you've used tools like ChatGPT, Gemini, or DeepSeek, Claude may feel familiar at first. But the differences show up quickly once tasks become more complex. These models aren't better or worse overall. They're optimized for different kinds of thinking and different working styles. Claude and ChatGPT. Different priorities. ChatGPT is optimized for speed, flexibility, and conversational flow. It often jumps into a task quickly, even when the goal is loosely defined. Claude takes a more deliberate approach. It prefers clarity before action and tends to reason through implications before producing an answer. In practice, ChatGPT feels energetic and improvisational. Claude feels reflective and careful. ChatGPT often excels at rapid ideation and quick drafts. Claude stands out when structure, nuance, and correctness matter more than speed. Claude and Gemini. Focus versus breadth. Gemini is designed to work across a wide range of tasks and environments. It adapts quickly and often shines when tasks involve integrations, tools, or fast synthesis. Claude focuses more narrowly on reasoning quality and language consistency. It's especially strong at maintaining coherence across long conversations or large documents. In practice, Gemini feels broad and adaptive. Claude feels focused and steady. Claude is often the better choice when sustained attention and depth are required. Claude and DeepSeek. Caution versus speed. DeepSeek is optimized for efficiency and rapid problem-solving. It tends to move quickly from prompt to output, often producing confident answers even when instructions are minimal. Claude takes a more cautious path. It prioritizes understanding the full context before responding and is more likely to slow down, clarify, or hedge when information is incomplete. In practice, DeepSeek feels fast, direct, and assertive. Claude feels careful, reflective, and deliberate. DeepSeek can be useful for rapid technical exploration. Claude is better suited for tasks where nuance, correctness, and long-term consistency matter. How the differences show up in real work. When tasks are simple, the differences between models can feel minor. As complexity increases, patterns emerge. Claude asks clarifying questions more often. Claude avoids guessing. Claude maintains tone and logic over long responses. This can feel slower at first, but it often reduces rewrites, corrections, and misunderstandings later. It's about fit, not rankings. There's no single best AI model for every situation. Claude works best when the problem is layered or ambiguous. You care about reasoning and explanation over speed. Consistency across longer work matters. Other tools may feel faster or more playful. Claude rewards patience, clarity, and intent, especially in serious or high-stakes work. You're working on a long document where clarity, consistency, and careful reasoning matter more than speed. Which tool fits best? Gemini. ChatGPT, DeepSeek, Claude is. A subtle shift in how you work. Working with Claude requires a small mindset shift. Instead of asking, "Can you do this for me?" You'll get better results asking, "Here's what I'm trying to solve. Let's think it through." Claude responds best when treated as a collaborator. Looking ahead. Now that you understand how Claude approaches problems, the next step is learning how to work with that behavior over time. In the next lesson, you'll explore projects, a way to keep context, goals, and direction consistent across longer work. This is where Claude starts to feel less like a chat box and more like a workspace. Working with projects. Some problems aren't solved in one sitting. They come back, they change, new details appear, decisions made earlier affect what happens next. When work stretches over time, remembering context becomes part of the problem. Let's start with a situation like that. Scenario: planning a renovation. Imagine you're planning a home renovation. You want to estimate a rough budget, think through the order of work, compare materials, revisit decisions as new constraints appear. You open Claude and start asking questions. What's most likely to happen if you plan a multi-step renovation entirely in separate, one-off chats? The conversation becomes faster over time. The answers become incorrect. You keep re-explaining context and correcting earlier assumptions. Claude refuses to help. Feeling the friction. You ask about flooring, then about plumbing and lighting. Each answer is helpful on its own, but none of them remember the bigger picture you're building. Earlier constraints fade unless you restate them. The problem isn't Claude's reasoning, it's the lack of a stable frame. A different approach. Now, imagine approaching the same renovation inside a project. Instead of isolated questions, Claude sees the overall goal, previous decisions, constraints you've already discussed. You're no longer starting over, you're continuing. Inside a project, Claude doesn't just answer your latest message. It reasons in relation to what came before. Budget estimates adjust instead of resetting. Suggestions respect earlier choices. Trade-offs remain consistent. The work starts to feel cumulative instead of fragmented. Revising without resetting. A week later, you get new contractor quotes. The budget changes. Instead of explaining everything again, you simply update the situation. Which costs increased, which parts are flexible. Claude adjusts previous recommendations instead of replacing them. Trade-offs shift, but the logic stays intact. This is where projects quietly save the most effort. What makes this renovation planning easier inside a project? Earlier decisions influence later recommendations. You don't need to ask follow-up questions. The interface looks different. Claude gives longer answers. A project is not a prompt. A project isn't a single instruction you get right once. It's a living context. Assumptions can change, priorities can shift, and details can be added gradually. Claude adapts as the project evolves, without losing track of what came before. The difference shows up over time. Claude projects emphasize continuity and coherence. ChatGPT projects emphasize access and organization. Neither is better in general, but Claude's approach is especially helpful when decisions build on each other. Which situation benefits most from being handled inside a project? Asking for a definition. Generating a single checklist. Planning and revising a renovation over time. Writing one short email. How to start a project. In Claude. From the Projects section in the interface, you can create a new project and begin working inside it. Every conversation within that project shares the same context and purpose. There's nothing special to configure. What matters most is choosing a clear goal at the start. In the next lesson, you'll go one step further by working with artifacts, a powerful feature that lets you build, revise, and refine something tangible. That's where your creativity starts to take real shape. See you there. Build, don't just ask. There's a point where talking through an idea becomes inefficient. You understand what you want, and you may even know how it should work. What's missing is something you can see, test, and refine. This lesson is about crossing that line, from explanation to execution with Claude's Artifacts feature. A familiar loop. Imagine asking Claude to design a simple registration form. Without artifacts, the process looks like this. 1. Claude generates HTML and CSS. 2. You copy it into an editor. Open a browser. Tweak spacing or colors. Repeat. The idea is sound, but the workflow is fragmented. What's the main problem in this workflow? You keep switching tools to see results. The explanation isn't detailed enough. Claude doesn't generate good code. The task is too complex. What artifacts change? Artifacts remove that friction. An artifact is a dedicated interactive output that Claude displays in a separate visualization window inside the interface. Instead of imagining results, you see them immediately. Rendered UI-formatted documents, live previews of code. Claude decides automatically when an artifact is needed, or you can ask for one explicitly. How artifacts appear in Claude. When Claude creates an artifact, it opens in a side panel next to the conversation. This panel has two main viewing modes. Preview shows how the result looks or behaves. Code shows the underlying source, when applicable. You can switch between them instantly. You can also access artifacts, yours and pre-made, from a separate tab on the left. Scenario: Promo website. Suppose you want to build a website to promote your catering services. Let's see how Claude can help with prototyping real quick. Great job! Here's what Claude created. What would be your next step with this website? Add the details and personalization in the text. Make a few edits in the color palette. Keep it as it is and show the audience. Editing without breaking everything. Artifacts are designed for targeted edits. You can highlight a specific section, text, code, or layout, and ask Claude to modify only that part. This avoids rewriting entire documents, breaking working sections. Iteration is the real power. Artifacts shine when ideas evolve. You can experiment with layouts, test styles, explore alternatives, compare versions. Artifacts include version history, so you can navigate changes instead of losing work. The mindset shift. Artifacts change the question you ask Claude. Instead of, "Can you explain this?" you ask, "Can you build this so I can see it?" That shift, from abstract discussion to concrete experimentation, is the real value of artifacts. Next, you'll learn how to guide Claude's reasoning and creativity more deliberately with different tool-specific prompting techniques. Stay tuned. Complex webs of knowledge. To get the best possible outcome from Claude, it's important to encourage it to connect ideas across different domains and generate more holistic, multifaceted responses. Today, you will learn how to master interconnected reasoning, guiding Claude to think across disciplines and discover unexpected relationships between concepts. Cross-domain analysis. Cross-domain analysis involves comparing how a single issue or innovation impacts different fields. This technique allows Claude to analyze the effects of an idea across multiple areas, revealing connections that may not be immediately obvious. Excellent. This prompt encourages Claude to think across domains and explore how the same innovation might produce different results in each. Let's move on. Consider a company as a system. Product development, marketing, and customer support all interact. A change in one area, like accelerating product releases, can affect support workload and marketing timelines. Systems thinking helps reveal these interdependencies. Great. By asking Claude to analyze interactions within a system, you encourage a more comprehensive understanding of how different parts influence each other. Well done. By focusing on the causal relationships between a change and its broader effects, you guide Claude to develop more insightful connections. Let's move to the next technique. Exploring ripple effects helps Claude look beyond the immediate outcomes to consider technological changes' broader long-term consequences. Finally, let's consider second-order consequences. Excellent. Considering second-order consequences encourages Claude to go beyond immediate results, uncovering stronger effects that might not be immediately obvious. Congratulations! You've mastered the art of promoting interconnected reasoning in Claude's responses. This skill allows you to generate more comprehensive and insightful analyses, helping you tackle complex, multifaceted problems effectively. In the next lesson, you'll learn how to guide Claude through structured frameworks to analyze problems even more deeply and consistently. Enhancing Claude's analysis. Welcome to the next lesson in your exploration of Claude. Today, we'll see how using multiple analytical frameworks helps you get more comprehensive and insightful analyses. Understanding analytical frameworks. Analytical frameworks provide structured approaches to examining complex issues. Using multiple frameworks can offer diverse perspectives. Excellent. This prompt covers a powerful analytical framework, SWOT, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, helping structure both internal and external evaluation. Combining complementary frameworks. Selecting complementary frameworks can provide a more holistic view of a subject. This prompt combines VRAO framework, value, rarity, imitability, organization, to assess the startup's internal resources and capabilities. Porter's 5 forces, new entrants, suppliers, buyers, rivalry, substitutes, to analyze the competitive landscape. This combination helps evaluate both internal capabilities and competitive dynamics, resulting in a more balanced analysis. Great job! This prompt outlines a sequential analysis process. It starts with the BCG matrix to evaluate the company's current product portfolio, then uses scenario planning to explore potential future outcomes, and concludes with a TOWS, threats, opportunities, weaknesses, strengths, analysis, to formulate strategies based on the insights gained from the previous steps. Well done! You now know how to guide Claude through multiple analytical frameworks to produce structured, well-rounded analyses. In our next lesson, we'll explore how to stimulate Claude's creative abilities to ignite that spark in the tool and get interesting results. Until then, keep practicing with multiple frameworks to enhance your analytical capabilities. Claude's imaginative potential. Today, we'll explore techniques to encourage more creative and innovative responses from Claude. By the end of this lesson, you'll be able to craft prompts that inspire Claude to generate original, imaginative, and unconventional ideas. Creative prompting involves using specific techniques to encourage Claude to generate more original, imaginative, and unconventional responses. Let's start with one of the most effective creativity techniques: introducing unusual scenarios. What if questions. You can inspire Claude by introducing unusual scenarios, combining unrelated concepts, or posing what if questions to spark out of the box thinking. Excellent. This prompt sets up an unusual scenario and asks for innovative solutions, which encourages Claude to think creatively and explore unconventional possibilities. Combining unrelated concepts. You already used one of them: unusual scenarios or what if questions. Next, combining unrelated concepts involves mixing ideas from different fields to generate unique solutions. When you combine unrelated concepts, you create unexpected connections that lead to new ways of thinking. Reversing assumptions. Great. By combining a smartphone with the concept of a sentient being, you push Claude to think of new ways this object could function, leading to innovative ideas. Which benefits can be achieved by using the reversing assumptions technique with Claude? It can reveal hidden opportunities or overlooked alternatives. It encourages Claude to explore paths that contradict established norms. It helps discover novel solutions by challenging conventional thinking. It simplifies complex problems by reducing variables. Now that you understand how reversing assumptions works, let's explore how metaphorical thinking can encourage abstract creativity. Great work! By comparing a car to a flowing river, Claude can explore how this metaphor shifts the function of the object, sparking abstract creative responses. Excellent. By limiting the materials and time, you've pushed Claude to think creatively, finding unique solutions under these constraints. Last task. Which creativity techniques work best for generating innovative product ideas? Imposing arbitrary constraints, like limited materials or time. Combining unrelated concepts such as smartphone and living being. Seeking multiple perspectives from different fields. Using only technical language and specifications. Amazing job! You've learned multiple techniques to encourage more creative, original responses from Claude, from unusual scenarios to constraints and perspective shifts. These approaches help move beyond obvious ideas and explore unexpected possibilities. That's it for Unit 2. In our next lesson, we'll explore techniques for communicating with the tool across various use cases and scenarios in which Claude performs best. Get ready to connect the dots in new and insightful ways. Writing and editing with Claude. You've written something important. A proposal, a report, an explanation that matters. The ideas are there, but something feels off. This is where most writing actually happens. Not in the first draft, but in the work that comes after. And this is where Claude makes a difference. The difference shows up in revision. Why do you think it's difficult to revise your own draft? You lack the technical skill to improve it. You don't remember what you were trying to say. You're too close to the work to see where it's unclear and... Team, some important changes are coming up. Starting next month, Sarah's moving into the product lead role, which means her current responsibilities will shift to Marcus and Jen. We're also bringing on 2 new hires to support the launch, and they'll report directly to me for now. The project timeline isn't changing, but the way we're structuring work will be different. Specifically, tasks will be more clearly divided, and communication channels will be streamlined. Let me know if you have questions. Notice what changed. The opening is more direct. Each point has its own paragraph. The timeline mentions now connects to what it means for the team. Notice what didn't change. Your tone, your information, your voice. It still sounds like you wrote it. Adjusting tone for different audiences. Sometimes the structure is fine, but the tone doesn't suit the audience. You've written a project update for your manager. It's clear and complete, but it feels too informal for senior leadership. You need the same facts presented more formally, but without sounding stiff or mechanical. After seeing Claude's answer, what's the most important difference between adjusting tone and rewriting content? Tone adjustment is faster than rewriting content, and it works well for short documents. Tone adjustment changes how something is said, not what is said. Maintaining coherence in long documents. While short writing is forgiving, long documents. Imagine you're finalizing a 20-page research report. Section 4 was written 2 weeks ago, Section 9 was finished yesterday. The problem? This could result in some inconsistencies. Why do you think this kind of review is difficult to do manually? You lose track of earlier sections while focusing on later ones. Documents are too long to read multiple times. It requires specialized knowledge about document structure. Writing that requires care. Another important thing, some messages require more than clarity. They require care. You're writing an email to inform your team that a project they've worked on for months is being postponed indefinitely due to budget cuts. You need to be honest about what's happening, but you don't want it to sound cold or dismissive. Looking at that draft, what's the main problem with how the difficult news is delivered? It's too long and doesn't explain why the decision was made because of unnecessary details. It acknowledges the situation, but doesn't really validate how people might feel. This is where Claude's careful nature really shines. It considers how language lands, not just what it says. As a result, it can help to address difficult topics without oversimplifying them. See the difference? The revised version doesn't hide behind corporate language or rush past the impact. It names the difficulty directly and offers concrete next steps, not vague reassurances. Claude didn't soften the news or add false optimism. It made the message clearer and more honest. When writing needs to be accurate and appropriate, Claude's deliberate approach is exactly what's right for the task. Next, you'll see how Claude can help you in organizing complex information into something that makes sense. See you in the next lesson. Understanding, research, and synthesis. You're trying to figure something out? You've found articles, advice, and different opinions. Now you're thinking, what do I do with all this? Let's see how Claude can help. Scenario: conflicting health advice. You've been feeling tired lately. You want to understand why and what to do about it. So you search online. You find an article saying you need more sleep, another saying it's probably your diet, a third claiming it's lack of exercise. One more suggesting it might be stress. Everyone sounds convincing, but no one agrees. What's the actual problem here? The information doesn't go beyond the basics. You have information but can't see what actually applies to you. The sources are unreliable, so you need to find more information. You could spend hours rereading everything, taking notes, trying to remember what each source said. Or you could try something different, a faster way to make sense of it all without wasting your mental energy. You copy the first article into Claude. Instead of asking for a summary, you ask, what's the main point this article is making about fatigue? Claude responds, this article argues that chronic fatigue often stems from sleep debt, not just sleeping too little one night, but consistently getting less sleep than your body needs over weeks or months. The key idea: your body keeps a sleep account that compounds over time. That's not what the article said word for word. It's what the article meant. Now you paste two more sources, the diet article and the one about exercise. You ask, how do these three sources connect? What's the best thing about this approach instead of reading three summaries separately? It tells you which source is most important. It's faster, and it removes contradictions. It shows you how the pieces fit together. When you don't understand something, sometimes you encounter a term you don't fully understand. For example, the stress article keeps mentioning cortisol dysregulation. You know cortisol is a stress hormone, but what does dysregulation really mean? Now you understand it through contrasts, what it looks like in different situations. This is how Claude teaches, by building understanding through varied examples. Claude responds. 1. Wellness programs fail when they're optional add-ons. The report argues they should be integrated into normal work structure, not separate wellness activities. 2. Mental health support needs to be proactive, not reactive. Waiting for people to ask for help means they've already been struggling too long. 3. Leadership participation matters more than program budget. Programs with engaged leadership and modest budgets outperform expensive programs with disengaged leadership. In this response, Claude went beyond the executive summary and picked out the key ideas from the entire report. What makes this more useful than reading the executive summary? It removes technical language, which makes it shorter. It extracts what actually matters based on your question. It highlights the most recent information. You follow up. What trade-offs does this report acknowledge, and what does it not address? Claude responds, acknowledged, time investment versus immediate productivity. Not addressed, how to implement this in remote or hybrid teams. The entire report assumes in-person work. That's analysis, seeing what's there and what's missing. Why do you think noticing missing considerations is valuable? It helps you find errors in the document. It reveals assumptions the author made without stating them. It shows which sections were written carelessly. Finding unexpected connections. The hardest kind of synthesis happens when sources don't obviously relate. Think back to the fatigue problem. You've got your health articles, but you also remember reading something about productivity systems and decision fatigue. Could these ideas be connected? As you could see from the answer, Claude went beyond summarizing and highlighted the link between the ideas in your situation. This is synthesis, seeing patterns that only emerge when you consider multiple ideas simultaneously. In a nutshell, Claude can find patterns across sources, explain through teaching, identify what's present and what's missing, and connect ideas that don't naturally relate. With this in mind, you'll next see how Claude assists in looking at things critically and strategically. Keep it up. Strategic thinking and critical review. Making decisions is not easy, especially when it's the kind where every option has pros and cons, and the right answer depends on what you're willing to give up. This is where most decisions actually get uncomfortable, and where Claude can help you. Scenario: should you take the job? You've been offered a new job. It pays 30% more and it's fully remote. You'd lose the in-person team you currently enjoy, but you'd gain more flexibility, something that matters a lot to you. Your friend says, take it, more money is always better. Your partner says, think about work-life balance. Remote can be draining. Your mentor says, small companies are risky. Stay where you have stability. Everyone is confident, and no one agrees. What makes this decision hard? The advice contradicts itself. Every option involves trade-offs, with no clear winner. You don't have enough information, and you're overthinking it. You open Claude and describe the situation. Then you ask, what am I actually trading off if I take this job? Claude responds, you're trading immediate financial improvement for relational and structural uncertainty. The 30% raise is concrete, but you're exchanging known team dynamics for unknown ones, and established processes for ambiguity. The question isn't which is better, it's which uncertainty you're more willing to navigate. That changes the frame. The problem is no longer what's the right answer, it's which trade-off fits you. After that, you follow up. What am I not considering? Claude responds, you're focusing on the job itself, pay, team, responsibilities. You haven't mentioned how remote work affects your living situation. Do you have a dedicated workspace? These logistics sound minor, but they shape daily experience more than salary does. You pause. You hadn't considered that your current apartment. Why is what am I not considering useful? It finds errors in your reasoning. It tells you the right answer. It makes the decision easier. It reveals blind spots you weren't aware of. Exploring alternatives. Choosing between two options can feel hard, but sometimes the real work is realizing there might be a third option you haven't considered. Stress testing. Your reasoning. You're leaning towards staying at your current job and negotiating remote work, but you want to make sure you're not just avoiding change. You ask Claude, what's the strongest argument against my reasoning? That's uncomfortable to read, but that's exactly what makes it so useful. Claude didn't attack your reasoning. It strengthened your thinking by showing you where it might be weak. Why should you deliberately seek arguments against your own reasoning? To gather more opinions. To test whether your reasoning holds up under scrutiny. To avoid making mistakes. To find the objectively correct answer. Evaluating constraints. Every decision has constraints, deadlines, resources, expectations. But sometimes, we treat constraints as absolute, when they're actually flexible. In this sense, what's the difference between a real constraint and an assumed one? Real constraints are external, assumed constraints are internal. Real constraints matter more than assumed constraints. Real constraints are written down, assumed constraints are verbal. Real constraints can't change, assumed constraints haven't been tested. When there's no right answer, some decisions don't resolve into a single correct choice. They resolve into priorities. As a result, they have different answers that work for different priorities. Claude won't decide for you, but it will help you see the decision more clearly. Claude clarifies trade-offs, reveals blind spots, tests your reasoning, and questions your assumptions. It surfaces trade-offs. It reveals blind spots. It tests your reasoning. It questions your assumptions. So, when there's no obvious answer, that kind of thinking support matters. You've now seen Claude's core strengths: careful reasoning, thoughtful analysis, and deliberate judgment. Next, you'll look at the bigger picture. When Claude is the right tool to reach for, and when something else will serve you better. The goal is to build workflows where each tool does what it does best. Using Claude alongside other tools. Working on something most often requires multiple steps: research, thinking, drafting, refining. That's why some tasks often call for more than a single AI tool. The question is, which one fits a specific step? Scenario: choosing a health insurance plan. Let's say you need to pick a health insurance plan during open enrollment. Therefore, you need to understand what the different plans actually cover, figure out which matters for your situation, compare the real costs, and make sure you're not missing something important. Each step needs something different. You can use Google for a traditional search, or try ChatGPT's web search feature for quick summaries alongside sources. Either way works. What matters is gathering the information you need. What do you need at this point? To understand what these differences actually mean for you. A recommendation on which plan to choose. More sources about insurance, and a summary of each plan's features. So bring everything to Claude by pasting the details of 3 different plans, and it will help you understand the differences. Now you understand what these differences actually mean for your situation. That's synthesis that you learned. Claude took complex information and made it relevant to you. Next, you bring ChatGPT's list back to Claude, along with your plan details. But why bring ChatGPT's output to Claude instead of just asking ChatGPT to analyze further? Claude handles deeper reasoning about specific trade-offs when given full context. ChatGPT can't do a detailed analysis. Therefore, Claude gives more accurate information. ChatGPT has already finished its task. This is strategic thinking you practiced earlier. Claude evaluated which considerations actually matter for your specific situation. You have a confident decision now. Plan B. This draft has all the information, but reading it back, it sounds stiff and overly formal for your workplace culture. What do you need now? A complete rewrite or a second draft from a different tool? To add more detail about why you chose Plan B? Tone adjustment while keeping the information? See? That's writing and editing in action. Claude refined what another tool drafted. Each tool played its role. What you've learned here is just the foundation. The real skill comes from practice, using Claude for your actual work, discovering what works for your specific needs, and building workflows that fit how you think. Now go use it. You're ready.